Most travelers treat the TSA's quart bag requirements like a puzzle to be solved, cramming in squeeze tubes, hoping nothing leaks, and then praying the agent waving you through is having a good day. What if the better move was to make the puzzle irrelevant? I'll show you the kit that I actually travel with internationally, product by product, and I'll tell you about a rule that's catching even some veteran travelers like myself completely off guard at some of the world's best airports. Ready to glide through that checkpoint and get your vacation started? Then stick around. Here's the truth about how most of us pack a toiletry kit. We grab the same products we use at home. We squeeze them into tiny little travel bottles. We pack a clear plastic bag. And then when we get to the airport, we spend the better part of, say, 20 minutes at the security checkpoint, nervously watching agents pull toiletry kits out of carry-on bags, hoping they don't want to give ours a closer look. That routine has real costs, not just the time, but the mental overhead too. The second guessing, did I check the sizes? Is the bag the right kind? Did I leave something at home because it didn't fit? It's a lot. I've been traveling internationally for a long time, and a few years ago I stopped accepting the TSA Toiletry Tango as the default. What changed for me was a trip to Whistler, British Columbia in 2018. I had back surgery earlier that summer. Lifting anything heavy was a real consideration, and I found this little dark blue nylon kit in my bathroom that I hadn't used in years. It was a gift from my mother from about a decade earlier, and I just remember thinking to myself, that little bag looks a lot lighter than the big heavy one I've been dragging around. What if I actually tried something different? I packed the blue kit, I called it my international kit, and I've been refining it ever since. The premise for today's episode is really simple. The traveler who builds a solid first international kit doesn't just pass every security check. They pack faster, they travel lighter, and they never lose a product at the checkpoints again. The quart bag stops being a puzzle and starts being a formality. Or in my case, it disappears entirely. That's what we're building today. My actual international kit, walked through piece by piece with the logic behind why each item made the cut. And before we're done, we'll cover the liquid rules landscape globally, because a few things that have changed are worth knowing before your next international trip. Let me introduce the two characters in today's story. The first one is a Ted Baker leather toiletry kit. Rich burgundy leather, structured, heavy duty. It looks like it belongs in a boardroom and not in the bathroom, like it should be sitting next to maybe a proper leather briefcase in a corner office somewhere. Now that's my domestic kit. It makes the trip whenever I'm driving somewhere or maybe when I'm checking a large suitcase. The second one is dark blue nylon. American flag emblem in the corner, no recognized brand, and it is noticeably lighter than the Ted Baker. That is my international kit. Now I want to pause here because I think the whole premise of this episode might feel a little counterintuitive at first, and I want to address that directly. Here's the assumption that most of us are carrying around. When you fly domestically, a quick business trip, a long weekend somewhere close, you pack a carry-on. So a dry, compact toiletry kit makes obvious sense. But when you fly internationally, maybe a trip to Europe, a Caribbean vacation, a safari, you check a bag. And if you're checking a bag anyway, why would you bother with a dry kit? The liquid restrictions don't apply to your checked luggage. Just throw the big old bottles in and call it done. That logic is understandable, and it's also where I'm going to push back today. Here's how I actually think about this kit. It lives in my closet, pre-packed, ready to go. International trip? Grab it. Domestic trip? Grab it. I don't repack it in between trips either. I just replenish it. The kit is a standing asset, and it's not a per-trip task. Once it's been built, the work is done, and whether I'm driving to Iowa or flying to Ireland, I've got one less thing to think about before I walk out the door. But let me add a layer that I think is worth noodling on for just a moment. Even on international trips where you plan to check a bag, airlines sometimes delay and misroute your luggage, and it happens more often on international itineraries with tight connections than anywhere else. I had a bag not make a connection in Dallas on a trip to Cancun a few years back. I reported it at the service desk, and fortunately there were enough flights between Dallas and Cancun that the airline had delivered it to my resort later that afternoon. I got lucky on the timing, but not everyone does. If your toiletry kit is in your checked bag and that bag doesn't arrive, you're making an unplanned pharmacy run in a foreign city, in a language you may not speak, looking for products you might not be able to find. If your kit is in your carry-on, that scenario just simply doesn't exist. And then there's a third angle, which I think is worth considering. The carry-on only international trip. A quick getaway, if you will. Americans tend to think of international travel as a long journey requiring a large suitcase, but it doesn't have to be. A long weekend in Dublin, 4 days in the Dominican Republic, maybe a quick escape to Banff or Cabo San Lucas. These trips are more achievable than most people give themselves credit for. And a dry international kit sitting pre-packed in your closet, well, that's part of what makes them possible. You grab the bag, you throw in a few days of clothes, and you go. No checked bag fees, no carousel waits, no lost luggage risk. The international kit goes in the carry-on because that's where it earns its keep, whether you're checking a bag or not. Now let's go through what makes up the kit. First item, and probably the one that gets the most raised eyebrows, are the Lush Dirty toothpaste tabs. Yeah, these are small chewable tablets. No tube, no liquid, no paste. You just chew one until it breaks down, and then you get your brush in your mouth quickly, and then you start scrubbing. Now the formula is looser than regular toothpaste because it's thinned by your saliva, so there is a little bit of a learning curve. My technique is to keep my mouth closed tight while I'm brushing to avoid any dribbling. Does it feel a little wonky at first? Yeah. But does it work? Absolutely. It doesn't have any fluoride though, so I wouldn't recommend it as your only toothpaste at home, but it is for travel and it's exactly what I need. Solid, no size restriction, goes right in the kit. I carry them in the original Lush container. It's compact, it's airtight, and it fits easily in the kit. The second item is your toothbrush, which for me is a gum folding travel toothbrush. The handle folds in on itself and takes up about half the space of a standard travel brush. Nothing complicated, but the fold matters when space is the variable that you're managing. This third item is worth spending a few moments on because it challenges a few assumptions all at once. The Mule shaving stick is a solid shaving product. It looks like a short, dense stick of soap. There's no can, there's no foam, there's no gel. You just rub it directly on your wet skin and then you get your hands a little bit wet and smooth the product around and shave. A couple of things I want to flag here. First, this product isn't just for men shaving their faces. Women can absolutely use this product as well. It works anywhere you'd use a shaving product, and it comes in several scents: aloe vera, grapefruit and mint, buckthorn, and the one that I use, sandalwood. Secondly, it doesn't create the kind of lather that most people are used to seeing. What it creates is a slick surface for the razor to glide on. That's actually all shaving cream has ever really been intended to do. The foam is largely a visual cue, not a functional requirement. You've been shown foam so many times in your life that the foam starts to feel like it's the point. It isn't. I'll add a genuine caveat here though. If you're someone who needs to see the lather on your face to know you're getting a complete shave, what I like to call shave by numbers, you may struggle with this a little bit at first. I have minimal facial hair, which probably makes the transition a little bit easier for me. Give it a trip or two before you make a permanent decision. It's about $11 and one stick lasts a long time. Link is in the description below. The fourth item is a standard Gillette disposable razor. Solid, no restrictions in any carry-ons. Next up is a solid stick antiperspirant. This one just happens to be Dove, but you get the idea. It's not a liquid, no size restriction, and into the kit it goes. Item number 6 is sunscreen, and this one is Banana Boat SPF 50+. It's waterproof, a twist-up solid format, same logic as the shaving stick. The product does exactly what sunscreen needs to do, and the solid format means it never counts as a liquid. If you've been carrying a spray or a lotion through security, this is a direct swap. Link in the description below. Now, I like to bring disposable contact lenses with me when I travel because some days I want the freedom to do more athletic things like golfing, hiking, spending time out at the beach. And sometimes I wear them on a plane, but the long-haul dry cabin air can be tough on the eyes. The lenses I use are AccuView Oasis Max Daily disposables, so I don't need to bring any contact solution with me. And this little bottle, these are just moisturizing tears, refresh tears, a 15 milliliter bottle, and this bottle is well within the 3.4 ounce or 100 milliliter limit. This is the only liquid in the kit, and it's never been flagged at a checkpoint. Link is down in the description below. And now that eighth and final item, that's for when you've got that dry airplane mouth and you need a refresher. Listerine solid strips. Not a liquid, compact, but in the kit. That's the full international kit. What you'll notice is the absence. No shampoo, no conditioner, no lotion, no multi-ounce anything. The kit is nearly invisible at the checkpoint because there's almost nothing for the checkpoint to find. Now, if this kind of thinking and research is useful to you, building travel systems that take the work out of your prep, then a subscription to Better Latitude is worth a few seconds of your time. Hit subscribe, drop us a like if you're getting value here, and that really helps us out. We really appreciate it, and it keeps the channel moving forward. All right. Let's keep going. Before we get into this section, I want to flag something right up front. There's a liquid restriction rule I'm going to share with you in a few minutes that was genuinely new to me when I researched this episode. Now, I've been traveling internationally for decades and I didn't even know this rule, so stick with me here. Let's start with the rule you're familiar with, the TSA's 311 rule. This rule hasn't changed in 2026. Each liquid container must be 3.4 ounces. That's 100 milliliters or smaller. 1 quart size clear zip top bag, 1 bag per person. And the TSA's definition of liquid is broader than most people assume. If you can pour it, pump it, squeeze it, or spread it, it's a liquid. Now that's going to include mascara, lip gloss, foundation, liquid deodorant, and even peanut butter. Now, I want to say something about TSA enforcement because I think it's worth mentioning. It genuinely is inconsistent. I've had global entry in TSA PreCheck for a while now, and I still run into situations that make no sense to me. At Phoenix Sky Harbor a few years back, an agent flagged us to move out of the PreCheck line because the indicator didn't appear on the paper boarding passes we'd presented, even though it was clearly there on the digital boarding pass on my Delta app. He sent us over to go through the full standard line. And once we got through to the agent on the other end, that second agent asked why we hadn't just used the PreCheck line. Well, when I explained the situation, he just shook his head, nodded towards the first agent, and said, "That guy's always got an issue with something." And that's a long version of my next point. If you're traveling with companions who don't have PreCheck, know that different airports enforce the rules differently. And sometimes even agents at the same airport can see things differently. Belts on or off, shoes on or off, laptops out or in. It can vary. In some ways, it really does feel like it depends on who's working that day. Now, the 100 milliliter standard is effectively universal across all the destinations most of our better Latitude viewers are going to travel to. But enforcement strictness, now that can vary meaningfully. Japan and Singapore are amongst the strictest. Some Southeast Asian airports are more flexible. In a few major EU hubs, maybe Amsterdam, Schiphol, and Munich, they now permit liquids up to 2 liters at CT scanner-equipped lanes, which brings me to the CT scanner topic. Some of you may have noticed that at certain airports, you're no longer being asked to remove your liquids bags from your carry-on. That's CT scanner deployment at work. 3-dimensional imaging that doesn't require the bag to be pulled out for a visual inspection. On a recent trip through Dubai International, I noticed that passengers around me weren't pulling their liquid containers out of their bags at all. That's consistent with what's happening there. Dubai International began trialing the CT scanners in mid-2025 with a targeted full rollout of over 100 machines across all terminals by the end of 2026. The container size limit has not changed. The rules are still the same. It's just that the process has changed. Now, here's the finding I mentioned at the top of this section. You've just done a long international trip. You're on your way home before connecting through Japan. You stopped at a duty-free shop inside the airport, passed security, you bought a bottle of something, it's sealed in the official duty-free bag. You've done everything right. Here's what most travelers don't know. If that duty-free purchase was a liquid and you're connecting through a Japanese airport, it may be confiscated at the security checkpoint for your connecting flight. Not because you did anything wrong, but because Japan applies its liquid restrictions at every security point, including connections, regardless of where the item was purchased. The duty-free bag and the receipt are not a free pass. The 100 milliliter rule still applies. I want to show you something from the field notes on this one, and the entry is blank. There's nothing there. You see, I've been traveling internationally for decades, and I didn't even know this rule existed before I researched this episode. I have even connected through Japan, and I've never even given it any thought. Fortunately for me, I did my research before traveling to Japan later this year, so I can make a new note in the Latitude ledger with all of those findings. Now, the trap itself is invisible because it seems counterintuitive. You're past security, you've already bought it at the airport, it's sealed, it should be just fine, right? Well, it isn't. So if you're connecting through Japan, do not count on duty-free liquids making it to your final destination in your carry-on. Either arrange for them to go in your checked luggage before you board the plane, or be prepared to leave them behind. Just a quick note of clarification. The Japan duty-free trap does not affect your bottles of water or your toiletry kit or anything you packed at home. This is specifically about liquids purchased duty-free in a foreign country before a Japanese connection. Know the rule, plan for it, and it won't cost you a thing. Now, before we depart today, there's just one more thing for anyone traveling internationally with prescription medications. Always carry copies of your prescriptions, a printed copy or a letter from your doctor. When you cross an international border, an inspection agent in another country may not recognize a prescribed medication on site. They may mistake it for something that it isn't and confiscate it on the spot. If you have your prescription documentation with you, you have a path forward. You can get it refilled locally if needed, and you have the paperwork to explain what it is, even if you're challenged. Don't assume that the label is enough. Carry the backup. Today we showed you how to build a kit that makes 311 a non-issue, and how to travel smarter whether you're checking a bag or not. If you liked what you saw here today, you're not going to want to miss this episode over here where we put together the perfect tech travel kit. Exactly what should and what should not be in your bag. Same philosophy, different category. And that, my friends, is better Latitude. We'll see you over there.